Hello, welcome to Unlocking Buddhism. Have you ever felt like life was throwing heavy rocks at you? Not real rocks, of course, but those moments that suddenly land in your path and feel impossible to carry. A plan you've been looking forward to suddenly collapses. A conversation turns sour. A tiny inconvenience snowballs into frustration, as if the whole universe had singled you out for trouble. We all know that weight, the tight chest, the restless mind replaying the story again and again, trying to make sense of why this happened to me. But here's a curious question. What if those rocks aren't heavy at all? Imagine a massive stone lying on the ground. If you don't pick it up, it's lighter than air. It doesn't burden you unless you choose to carry it. The same is true for many of our daily frustrations. They only gain weight when we wrap them in the thoughts, "This is my problem. This is happening because of me." Buddhist wisdom calls this practice contemplating non-self, seeing situations without placing I or mine at the center. It's not about denying reality or pretending challenges don't exist. It's about seeing clearly. The rain didn't fall on you. The traffic light didn't turn red because of you. These are events unfolding according to countless causes and conditions: wind, temperature, human schedules, the timing of machines, none of which revolve around your personal story. What happens when we put the rock down? The mind feels lighter. Anger softens. Anxiety loosens its grip. And with that space, clarity and compassion can naturally arise. This isn't abstract philosophy. It's a skill you can practice in the middle of your day, in the middle of your struggles. Leave a short comment below. Rock, if you've ever realized you were carrying something heavier than you needed to. The first time I heard it, I thought it was just a clever metaphor. But over the years I began to realize it was not just a poetic phrase. It was a mirror, reflecting the way my mind worked every single day. Take, for example, the holiday I had been planning for months. I could almost taste the salty air, hear the rhythm of the waves, feel the sand warming under my feet. Everything was ready. But on the very morning of my departure, the sky darkened. By the time I reached the bus station, rain was pouring in sheets, the kind of rain that soaks you in seconds. Inside, my mood shifted from excitement to frustration in a heartbeat. Really? My mind told a very personal story, as if the entire weather system had aligned against me. But if I paused long enough, I could see the truth. Those clouds had been gathering long before my trip was even on the calendar. Winds far away had pushed them together. Moisture had built up. Temperatures had dropped. This rain was the end result of countless natural processes, none of which cared about my holiday plans. The rain was just rain. The heaviness I felt wasn't in the water falling from the sky. It was in the invisible burden I had chosen to pick up, the belief that this was happening to me. The same script played out another day, but in miniature. I was running late, weaving through the city streets, when the traffic light ahead turned red. Instantly, my mind reacted. Why now? Why me? In that split second, I became the star of my own drama, the single victim of an unfair universe. But then I looked around. Every car had stopped. Every pedestrian on the sidewalk had paused. I wasn't singled out. I was just one of many, each caught in the same ordinary moment. The plot I'd imagined was mine alone, and it dissolved as soon as I stopped believing it. And then there's the most absurd example, the missing slipper. One late night, half asleep, I reached under the bed. One slipper was there. The other had vanished into the darkness. My mind spun little conspiracies. The slipper had hidden itself. The universe had a sense of humor. But of course a slipper can't think. It had simply been kicked aside earlier without me noticing. The weight wasn't the absence of the slipper. It was the story my ego wrapped around it. This is how the Buddha's teaching on anattā, or non-self, comes alive in the smallest details of daily life. It's not some distant abstract doctrine meant for dusty books. So often, the answer is no. I've seen friends discover this for themselves. One told me about waiting in a long supermarket line. At first, she tapped her foot, glanced at her phone, sighed loudly. But then she caught herself. This line isn't here to punish me. She decided to put down the rock. The The line didn't move faster, but the heaviness in her chest melted away. She even started a light conversation with the woman in front of her. It's tempting to think these are just small annoyances, but they reveal something much larger. Whether it's rain, a red light, a missing slipper, or a slow checkout, the pattern is the same. An event happens, the mind rushes in to make it personal, and we take ownership of something that was never ours to begin with. That's when the rock becomes heavy. The more I practice, the more I see that life is full of rocks lying along the path. Some are ours to carry, the duties we've committed to, the responsibilities we've chosen, the acts of care that define our relationships. But so many others are just sitting there, waiting for someone to bend down and pick them up. And without realizing it, we're constantly bending down, stacking them on our backs, and wondering why we feel so exhausted. The freedom doesn't come from making the world free of rocks. It comes from seeing the choice, and that choice is always here, in the smallest moments, waiting for us to notice it. 3. Teaching. Main Buddhist teaching. 6,000 characters. In Buddhism, the idea of non-self, anattā in Pali, is often misunderstood. It doesn't mean you don't exist, or that your experiences aren't real. It means that the self we so tightly defend is not the solid, unchanging entity we imagine it to be. When we say I or mine, we are pointing to something fluid, a process in constant change, not a fixed object. The weather changes, and we think it's about us. A stranger cuts us off in traffic, and we feel personally attacked. A plan falls apart, and we believe fate has targeted us. This reflex is deeply ingrained. The mind moves almost automatically to place me at the center of the story. But the Buddha pointed out that this habit is one of the roots of suffering. When we examine an experience closely, we find that events arise from causes and conditions that have nothing to do with our personal identity. Rain falls because of air pressure, temperature, and wind patterns, not because we planned a picnic. Traffic lights change on timers or sensors, not to spite us. Slippers get misplaced because of simple movement and chance, not because the universe has a sense of humor. This is why the Buddha encouraged the contemplation of non-self. By removing I and mine from our interpretation of events, we see them as they are, impersonal processes unfolding according to conditions. This doesn't make us cold or detached. On the contrary, it frees us from unnecessary tension and opens space for wise and compassionate responses. Imagine the mind as a room. When ego-centered thinking fills it with heavy furniture, grievances, resentments, personal offenses, there's little space left to move. But when we set down even one of those rocks, the room opens up. The air feels lighter. Creativity, patience, and kindness can move freely again. The practice of non-self begins with small observations. Notice the moment the mind makes something personal. In each case, the mind has taken an event and glued the I to it. If we can gently peel that I away, we see a simple fact. The event is just the event. No extra weight is needed. This shift in perspective has two immediate benefits. First, it reduces self-inflicted suffering. If the red light isn't about me, I don't need to generate anger over it. If the rain isn't about me, I don't need to feel cheated. Second, it sharpens our ability to see the real causes of a situation. If the dripping faucet isn't an insult, it's easier to notice the worn washer and fix it. We respond more skillfully because we're no longer blinded by the haze of ego. Over time, this practice builds a quiet confidence. We stop fearing the future because we trust our ability to respond wisely to whatever comes. If the problem is within our control, we work on the cause. If it's beyond our control, we step back without picking up the rock. In both cases, the mind remains steady, and this steadiness is not just for our benefit. People around us notice it. They feel more at ease in our presence. They see someone who doesn't get easily thrown off balance, who listens without rushing to judgment, who can face challenges without making them personal. This too is part of the teaching. When we carry less weight, we make space for others to breathe more easily as well. Non-self is not about erasing your identity. It's about loosening the grip of the stories that make you suffer. It's the difference between being crushed under a rock and calmly choosing whether to pick it up. 4. Application. Everyday situations as expressions of the Dhamma, expanded by 5,000 characters. The beauty of the non-self practice is that it doesn't require perfect silence, incense, or hours on a meditation cushion. Its real field of training is the everyday, right where life happens, right where the ego feels most at home. Let's start with relationships. Imagine a friend cancels plans at the last minute. Hurt and resentment tighten in the chest. But if we pause and see the situation without I or mine, we might notice they're tired, overwhelmed, or simply caught in circumstances that have nothing to do with us. This doesn't mean we approve of being treated carelessly. It means we respond without the poison of personal offense, perhaps with understanding or with a clear and calm conversation later. At work, the same principle applies. But looking deeper, maybe they were eager to contribute, unaware of how it came across. Without I in the frame, we can address the behavior if needed, but without the layers of ego-driven anger that cloud our judgment. Health challenges also offer fertile ground for this practice. Yet illness, like the rain, is a process. Genetics, habits, environment, timing, unfolding without personal intention. Dropping the me doesn't remove the reality of the illness, but it removes the bitterness that so often accompanies it. From that steadier place, we're more likely to follow treatment plans, adjust our lifestyle, and seek support without the extra weight of feeling singled out. Even the small daily frictions can be transformed. The queue at the supermarket is not a personal attack. The internet outage is not a cosmic punishment. The slow elevator is not conspiring to make you late. When we see them as they are, conditions unfolding according to their own nature, irritation dissolves, replaced by either patience or constructive action. Non-self also helps in the way we care for others. Often, we pick up the heavy rock of believing it's our job to fix every problem in a loved one's life. But stepping back, we see their path is theirs, their choices are theirs. This doesn't mean turning away. It means helping with a lighter touch, free from the anxiety of needing to control their outcome. In doing so, we respect both their freedom and our own peace of mind. Another subtle but powerful application is in moments of anticipation or fear about the future. But the future, like the weather, doesn't revolve around our personal identity. We can prepare, take wise steps, and remain open to adjusting when reality unfolds differently. This reduces the emotional spikes that come from thinking the universe is keeping score against us. The key is consistency. Each time you feel tension rise, ask, where is the I here? Over time, this becomes a quiet reflex, not in the sense of suppressing emotion, but of loosening the grip on the story that makes the moment heavier than it needs to be. Sometimes the release is physical, shoulders dropping, breath softening. Other times it's mental, a sudden clarity that the situation is not personal, just part of the flow of causes and conditions. This doesn't mean problems disappear. The rain will still fall, traffic lights will still turn red, slippers will still go missing. But without the extra layer of, this is happening to me, these moments are lighter, easier to navigate. We stop exhausting ourselves with battles that exist only in the mind. And in that space, patience, clarity, and even kindness have room to grow. 5. Considerations or lessons, ultra-expanded 4,500 plus characters. At the start, the practice of non-self might seem almost too subtle to matter. You notice irritation fading slightly faster, or a disagreement not lingering in your thoughts. You miss a bus, but the mental storm passes in minutes instead of hours.
It is tempting to dismiss these as small changes, but they are early signs of a deep rewiring in the mind's habits. Non-self is not about erasing your humanity, denying feelings, or pretending that injustice doesn't exist. It is about seeing with increasing clarity that the self we defend so fiercely is not a fixed, permanent entity. It is a process, a constant interplay of sensations, perceptions, thoughts, and reactions.
And when we stop clinging to this process as me or mine, we loosen the grip of the endless cycle of personal offense, defensiveness, and fear. Life's storms will still arrive. The rain will still fall on your plans. The words of others may still be careless, and your body will still face its share of sickness and aging. But without I at the center, these events lose much of their power to wound. They become situations to meet rather than attacks to endure. This shift is profound. Instead of fighting the weather of life, we learn to walk in it without getting soaked in resentment. The Buddha repeated this teaching because it is a direct path to freedom from unnecessary suffering. It is not reserved for monks on distant mountains. It is for parents in kitchens, workers in offices, travelers in traffic. We start small, noticing the annoyance at a red light, the sting of a delayed reply, and we consciously set those weights down. Slowly, the same skill begins to operate in heavier matters: grief, loss, betrayal, and fear. We may not erase the pain entirely, but we stop doubling it by making it personal. As this way of seeing deepens, relationships transform. Without the constant need to protect an identity, we can hear criticism without collapsing, give without expecting repayment, and forgive without keeping a ledger. At work, we no longer burn energy defending our ego against imagined slights. Our energy goes towards solving real problems. This shift alone can change careers and homes, because clarity and steadiness inspire trust. An inner confidence grows from this practice, not the brittle pride of thinking, "I can handle anything," but the calm certainty that whatever comes, it will be met wisely. If a problem can be solved, we solve it without bitterness. If it cannot, we let it rest, without carrying it, like a personal curse. That ability to choose, to pick up what's needed and leave what's not, is a quiet form of mastery over life. And rather than making us cold, this freedom opens the heart. Without the noise of self-centered worry, compassion comes more naturally. We see others as they are, not as extensions of our own story. We can help without trying to control, love without clinging, and walk away without hatred when walking away is necessary. But this practice has its pitfalls. Misunderstood non-self can become an excuse for emotional avoidance or neglecting responsibility. "It's not about me" should not be used to turn away from genuine harm that needs to be addressed, or to hide from the work of growth. True non-self is not detachment from life, but full engagement without the weight of ownership over every moment. The deepest lesson is that most of our suffering is not from what happens, but from the personal drama we wrap around it. The rain falls, that's all. The mind writes a story where I am targeted, unlucky, or cursed. If even for a moment we can set that story aside, the rain remains, but the suffering evaporates. Over time, these moments accumulate. What starts as a conscious effort becomes second nature. We may still feel the reflex of I, but each time we release it, we strengthen the habit of freedom. After months, years, or decades, this way of seeing can become the default, not because we force it, but because we have learned, again and again, that life is lighter when we stop carrying what was never ours to begin with. 6. Conclusion and CTA. 3,000 characters. The heart of the teaching on non-self is not about philosophy. It is about freedom. Freedom from carrying burdens that were never truly ours. Freedom from fighting storms that were never aimed at us. That keeps the mind restless and the heart closed. If we are honest, most of the suffering we feel in daily life is built not by events themselves, but by the story we tell around them. A red light becomes an insult. Rain on a holiday becomes a betrayal. A friend's silence becomes rejection. Remove the I from these stories, and the truth is revealed. The light is simply red, the rain simply falls, the friend is simply silent. None of it is personal. This doesn't mean we stop caring. In fact, it allows us to care more wisely. When we are not trapped in self-centered thinking, we can respond to life with clarity instead of reaction. We can act where action is useful, and step back where stepping back is wise. This balance, knowing when to engage and when to let go, is at the heart of a peaceful life. The practice begins in small, ordinary moments. The traffic jam, the broken cup, the late reply. Use these as training grounds. Notice when the I appears and starts writing a story. Then gently set it down. See what changes. Over time, this simple shift can reshape the way you meet every challenge, big or small. The beauty of this path is that you don't have to wait for the perfect moment to start. You can try it now, in the very next situation that stirs irritation or disappointment. You can choose, in that moment, to let the rain be rain, the light be light, and life be life. If this teaching speaks to you, try it for a week. Keep a quiet watch for the I in your thoughts. and see what happens when you leave it out of the story. Then come back here and share what you noticed, not as a performance, but as a way of learning together. Because in the end, this is not just about understanding the Dharma. It is about living it, moment by moment, until the habit of clinging fades and the natural ease of the mind shines through. That is the real gift of non-self. Not emptiness, but peace.